There you are. I hit that button and I'm sitting here looking at the screen and nothing was happening. Okay, but we're on. We're live. We're going to talk about Peanut the Squirrel because holy shit, the government just screwed this one up. Good morning. Okay. It's Monday morning, and that's supposed to be Mellow Monday, but the election is tomorrow. And today, I'm going to talk about the thing that is going to swing the election back in the right direction. Peanut the Squirrel. Now, I know. It's just a squirrel. Just a squirrel. It's just somebody's pet squirrel. You know? And hey, people have had pet squirrels. My mother had a pet squirrel when she was little. Ate pancakes, right? And I'm sorry, I think the squirrel's name was George. This was before there was a me, but Peanut the Squirrel is a tragedy story. And frankly, Peanut was a little more well known. It's important to understand that the story involves Peanut the Squirrel and Fred the Raccoon. And I know, guys, I know you're out there asking, what the hell does somebody's pet squirrel have to do with trannies and gun rights? I'm getting to it. And I want you guys to pay close attention to this. So, who is Peanut the Squirrel? Peanut the Squirrel is an internet celebrity. There you've got an AI image of Peanut and Roger. There's Peanut, right? And this is one of the big things with Peanut is he and Mark Longo runs an animal rescue, right? And you'll notice that the Instagram they have is largely, you know, it's pictures of the horses and the donkeys and the llamas and the alpacas and all that, right? But Peanut the Squirrel was an animal rescue, right? And Mark's got all these videos of him and Peanut having breakfast together, and you know, the internet loved Peanut the Squirrel. I'll be fair, I didn't know anything. I wasn't clued in on this one before the government ruined everything. I was, every now and then I like to watch Tim Pool's Chicken City. and stuff like that. And we've talked about it on the show before. The feel-good stories. Oh, dude's got a pet squirrel that eats pancakes and waffles with him. Oh, Tim's got a bunch of chickens out there, and they wear sunglasses to keep them from pecking each other, and they wear saddles to keep their feathers from getting torn up when they're, making baby chickens. And it's all very cute and very heartwarming, but it doesn't lead. And it breaks my heart that in order for the world to find out about Peanut the squirrel, he had to become a bleeding headline. If it bleeds, it leads. And why is that? So, you've all heard the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Headline news is always about disaster, tragedy, looming threat. And there is actually a good reason for that. It's not just a marketing thing. It's not just an attention-grabbing thing. People are interested in the threat. So when there's a feel-good story, oh, he's got a pet squirrel and it's cute, and we love that he's got the cute pet squirrel, and we like to watch the little videos from time to time. Well, what happens is you see the video, you have your you have your moment there, right? And you feel good for a minute. But what's the motive? Well, you had your feel-good moment. So you might go and watch a few more videos about Peanut the squirrel and get a chuckle and a good warm and fuzzy, but you don't suddenly, in most cases, find yourself researching and looking for, oh wait, I need to verify that this guy has a pet squirrel. I'm not sure if I believe, or what does that mean for my future? Do I need to rush out and buy emergency supplies? Do I need to order MREs and fire blankets? And do I need to buy a 30-foot Connex and dig a new hole in my back 40? No, you don't do that, because the pet squirrel, as cute as it is, and as much as it gives you that good warm fuzzy, does not change your life or threaten to change your life. Now, when there's a hurricane bearing down, you go and look at multiple different weather reports to see what the track of the hurricane is. You start thinking about, do I need to go buy bread? Do I need to get a hotel in a different town? Do I need to get out of town? Do I have propane or gasoline on hand for my grill and my generator? Do I have jugs of water for when my well shuts out because I lost power? Am I going to be able to call for help when the internet and the cell phone towers go down? When there's a threat, oh my God, there's a new terror threat. What do I do? Do I have enough ammunition on hand? Do I have enough sappy plates? Am I far enough away from the shitty cities where they're going to start driving love trucks into MAGA parades again? That's why the bleed leads. Because when you've got a headline that says the world is going to kill you, then you start worrying about how the world is going to kill you. Everybody's heard about Peanut over the weekend, because what happened? The government murdered Peanut. And in fairness to the government, I will say they didn't do it without reason. But they did it without good reason. I am not going to advocate for you to draw weapons on government agents generally, but I want to ask this question. At what point, when armed men kick in your door and start aiming weapons at the people you love, do you say, catch? Right? Maybe it's not for a pet squirrel. Maybe it's not. Right? I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So here's the story. Peanut the squirrel, beloved pet and internet sensation. I've got the story from New York Post. Euthanized after being seized by New York State. And I got to say, that headline makes it sound even worse. right? We've seen lots of stories about cops overreacting, right? They're at a place they're not supposed to be. They're at the wrong house, and they shoot the dog. Right? We've seen a lot of stories about cops just showing up and shooting the dogs, and oh shit, I'm sorry, it's the wrong house. My bad. And then there's no consequences, and that's infuriating. It really is. I think this may be worse because they came in and seized the animals, took them away, and then had time to deliberate and hear arguments and decided, you know what? Fuck them. We're just going to go ahead and kill them. We're just going to go ahead and kill your beloved pet. Over what? Licenses. How many times on this show have I talked to you guys about licenses? All licensing is an illegitimate power grab and money grab by government agents and special interests. Even medical licenses. Oh, but Lowry, we need to have a piece of paper there to show us that this person knows what they're doing. They got a degree. They got a medical degree. That's a piece of paper. What does a government medical license tell me that the piece of paper doesn't? Because it's not like you don't have doctors out there who have been sued for malpractice and still have their licenses. There are many doctors out there who have lost malpractice lawsuits because they did wrong, and they still have their license because they pay the bill. Right? So the license does nothing at all, except to serve as an additional bar to entry. Now, there's a good argument to be made for some bars to entry, I'll grant, but government licenses only do that. It's a power grab and it's a money grab. They do two things. They take your rights and they take your money. License to carry a firearm, that is a corrupt government taking your rights from you at gunpoint under threat of death and then offering to sell those rights back to you for money. That's what licensing is. Driver's license. You have been deprived by force against your will of an inalienable human right and then sold that right. Had it sold back to you. That's how licensing works. So, Peanut the squirrel of internet fame has been euthanized after the pet was seized by New York State earlier this week, according to the Department of Environmental Conservation. Doesn't that just sound like a lovely, fluffy, fuck you, they killed the squirrel. The 7-year-old Grace rescue squirrel, commonly referred to as Peanut on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, was put to death along with Fred the raccoon so that the animals could be tested for the presence of rabies, according to a statement from the agency obtained by WETM. They were, to my knowledge, to all apparent reports, neither animal had rabies. Peanut the squirrel, 7, was put to death by the state of New York after being confiscated due to rabies concerns, according to the Department of Environmental Conservation. Peanut's guardian, Mark Longo, took to Instagram to memorialize his beloved pet in a video. Through tears, Longo, with his girlfriend at his side, said Peanut was the best thing that ever happened to us. And he tells his story. Let me play the story because yeah, let's go ahead and watch this video. This is from TMZ, and I like this video being from TMZ because TMZ is basically, you know, this is a pro-Democrat organization, right, all day. And you've got a couple of diverse characters here who are on board, like, holy shit, it's the government murdered this guy's cute squirrel.
We just learned that they have euthanized Peanut. And the raccoon as well.
And the raccoon as well. I am so sorry. This must be really difficult for you.
It not only tears my family apart, but Peanut was the cornerstone of our nonprofit animal rescue. And 10 to 12 DEC officers raided my house as if I was a drug dealer. I was sat outside my house for 5 hours. I had to get a police escort to my bathroom. I wasn't even allowed to feed my rescue horses breakfast or lunch. I was sat there.
See, in what world does it take an armed goon squad 5 hours? 5 hours to catch a squirrel and a raccoon. Right. In a closed house, in what world does it take 5 hours for them to catch 2 pets? Right? So without even having the argument about whether or not it's reasonable for the government to come in and murder your pets, they made him stay outside of his home. Armed men forced him to stay outside of his home while they ransacked it for 5 hours. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. They were looking for something else. They thought they were going to find something else that they could smear this guy with, that they could hurt him with. Because that's what the government does. Right? Xander says, and the Karen that reported them has gone incognito now. Yeah, and this, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, it's a 2-minute video. We're not going to watch that whole video. So apparently the way this went down was somebody made an anonymous report, or there were anonymous reports that they had the pets, right? Anonymous reports that these pets, the argument is that they're wild animals and you have to have a special license for that. Okay. Let me grant that as a reasonable position for just a moment, and then ask the question. If he needed to have a special license, then why wasn't he afforded the opportunity to get the license? Right? How do you know that you need a special license for squirrels? Right? I live out in the woods. There's squirrels all over the damn... Well, I've got owls and hawks too, so we don't have as many squirrels. But let's just say, hypothetically, I put out a feeder for the squirrels, for the wild squirrels out here, right? How much different is that than keeping them as pets? If I put out a feeder, the squirrels come in the yard, they eat from the feeder, and then I go over and hold out a hand, and one of them jumps in my hand and turns out to be docile enough to let me pet it, right? Because that's basically what this is. Right? They fed the squirrel, and then they let the squirrel move in with them. So at what point between squirrels exist and there's one living in my house, where's the bright line that makes the distinction between wild animal that I happen to feed because, I might just want to come out on my back porch one morning with a 308 and take Bambi off the feeder corn post for breakfast, and this is now a beloved family pet. And how does the government get to argue that it gets to make that choice? And here's where this becomes important in a meaningful way, right? Let's talk about there we go. I was about to say I had an article pulled up that I want to talk about. So Harris VP pick greenlit law allowing state to take child custody from parents who oppose sex change surgeries. Does that seem like a leap? The government decided that it doesn't like the squirrel, and so it burst in and murdered the squirrel. The party of infanticide is actively arguing for laws that allow them to take custody of your children away from you if you refuse to have their genitalia mutilated by psychopath pseudo-medical doctors practicing absolutely anti-Hippocratical torture and mutilation and essentially murder. So Harris VP Pitt greenlit law allowing state to take child custody from parents who oppose sex change surgeries. Vice President Kamala Harris's newly announced running mate, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, signed a bill in April of 2023, allowing the state to make custody determinations if a child is denied access to sex change procedures. I'm not gonna dig into that one too deep today and rehash it, but I want to also bring up red flag laws. So what happened to Peanut? Some random nobody called a government agency and said, hey, this guy's got a squirrel and a raccoon and I don't like it. Will you go murder them, please? How do red flag laws work? On an anonymous tip, the government decides that based on that tip alone and with no other evidence, you are in some way unfit to possess a firearm. And suddenly, magically, your Second Amendment right disappears. And a dozen government agents in body armor with assault rifles kick in your door, and you either surrender your rights and your firearms, your property, or you die. Now let's rewind a little bit. We had one old fat dude who was stuck in a one of those scooter cart things because he was too old and fat and crippled to walk around on his own, who made a passing threat against Joe Biden. What was this, 2 years ago now? Government agents raided his home and murdered him in the wee hours of the morning. Go back and read those news reports. I dare you to find one that mentions him pulling a trigger. It's not like they showed up and knocked on the door and he opened fire. No, they showed up with a huge team of dozens of agents and blasted through his windows and murdered this man. Now, I'm not defending the comment, right? I don't think that you should be going online and saying that you're going to murder the president. Okay? Fair play. But at the same time, First Amendment, yo. Oh, there, where do you draw the line on jokes? Because Kathy Griffin is still walking around. Snoop Dogg is still walking around. Johnny Depp is still walking around. Joe Biden is still walking around. Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, they're still walking around. Right? These people have not been incarcerated for threatening to murder Donald Trump or burn down the White House in the case of Johnny Depp. Well, no, Johnny Depp also, he also quipped, I wonder when was the last time an actor killed a president. Right? So you've got rules for thee and not for me. And a world where you've got an overbearing government who, on no more evidence than an anonymous tip from a stranger, will break down your door, search your home, murder your pets, take your children, and sterilize them, take your property, and murder you in your sleep. So tomorrow, I hope you've all voted already, but tomorrow is election day. It's the last chance. This is what you're voting. This is what you're voting on. You're voting for either a constitutional representative republic in which a document written to found the nation, restricts the power of the government and causes its loyalty to be owed to the people. Those of us who pay the bills, who pay for that government to exist. You're voting between that and a dystopian psychopathy that is more terrifying than 1984, Brave New World, the USSR, and North Korea combined. We have made arguments in the past that the constant knee-jerk jump to everybody's Hitler is hyperbolic and unproductive. But here's the thing about Democrats in 2024. It is getting more and more difficult to convince low information voters, people who aren't paying attention to news and politics, the people who don't live in the world of politics and study it and understand it. You're just average, normie, Joe Blow nobodies out there. It is getting more and more difficult to convince them of how dangerous the enemy left is, because the things that they're proposing, taking your children away if you refuse to mutilate them, abortion up to and including the time after birth, which is just straight up infanticide, mutilating and sterilizing children against their will, without their informed consent, and against the will of the parents involved, raiding your home and murdering your pets, extrajudicial executions based on Twitter comments. These are things that are all happening, actually happening, right? The introduction of pornographic material into your kindergartners' classrooms in public schools, right? These are things that are actually happening, and it's getting more and more difficult to convince your normies who are uninformed that these are the things that are happening, because the left is so outrageously psychotic that it's hard to believe anything, any true thing you say about them is not extraordinary hyperbole. I'm gonna pick on my dad for just a minute. Several years ago, when the governor of Virginia was pushing that bill, and we were talking about the post-birth abortion things, I was telling him about it, and he actually got upset with me and said something about looking at ridiculous conspiracy theory stuff, and I said, Dad, read the bill. I mean, it's like the whole bill is like 3 pages, and it's very clear. And I mean, we had a little bit of a tussle over it. I mean, we didn't come to blows, kind of shouted at each other a little bit. But I was like, no, seriously, go read the bill. It literally says in the bill that if the mother, like, it's not just that the bill authorizes the termination of the child after it's born. It goes so far as to say that if the mother is incapacitated, like, for example, a woman might be after having gone through labor, using anesthesia to struggle through the pain, and now be exhausted and unconscious, if she's in any way, and it does say in any way incapacitated, then the doctor has the authority to make the determination on whether the mother is, I shit you not, physically, mentally, or financially healthy enough to raise the child. And if the medical professional, if the doctor determines that the mother is not all 3 of those things, mentally, physically, and financially healthy enough to raise the child, then the doctor, in her absence because she's incapacitated, can make the decision to terminate the pregnancy. In the same bill where it authorizes that to be done after the baby's born. It is becoming more and more difficult to have a conversation with low information voters and left-wing voters because their party is so psychotic that their basic platform sounds like comedic hyperbole out of the Babylon Bee, but it's not. They really are that psychotic and far gone. It may be that the people you know and love and have loved your whole life who just happen to still vote Democrat, vote blue no matter who because they got in the habit of it. It may be that they simply do not understand that what they're voting for is euthanasia and segregation and massive wealth redistribution, extraordinary increases to taxes, the involuntary sterilization of your children. It may be that they don't understand these things, but that doesn't change the fact that they're voting for it. And trying to help them understand what psychotic monsters they're enabling and funding and voting for has become nearly an exercise in futility itself. Peanut the Squirrel might just be, coupled with the Amish voting in Pennsylvania, the thing that saves our country, as so many radical, psychotic, blue-haired leftists want to believe that they're pro-animal, that they're kind and caring, and that they're concerned about the plight of cute little fuzzy creatures. And they've just been shown in no uncertain terms, your Democrat government will murder your fluffy bunnies. Because the future that the Democrat Party envisions is one where there is a ruling class of beautiful, wealthy people who are gender diverse, ruling over a slave class of androgynous gray aliens who only reproduce in fucking cloning vats through bosconification. That's it. That's the choice. A future of beauty, aesthetic appeal, wonderful sex within the confines of a committed monogamous relationship, or a wall of gray. Those are your options. So, if you haven't already voted, shame on you. Get out tomorrow and do your duty. Vote accordingly. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.